Whatever your brand values you've identified as, they need to come out in everything that you do. So that applies to comments, it applies to posts, it applies to direct messages. Everything should represent the shape that you have decided that you're going to put into the world, and that ought to start with respect of the other person that you're commenting on. And if you do that, that's what I've been doing for 3 years hard on LinkedIn now, is putting my name out there by commenting thoughtfully and putting my own posts out, and that has attracted more like-minded people into my network, and correspondingly my content now gets great engagement because all of those people who are on my side want to support me when my content comes out.
Your network is your net worth. Come listen to some of the most successful people I know share invaluable knowledge, stories, and advice in real estate, business, and beyond. This is Weiss Advice. Whether you want to take your business or personal life to the next level, look no further. Welcome back to Weiss Advice. This is Yonah Weiss. I'm your host, and I am so happy today. I'm joined by someone very special, not only because he's the first person from the United Kingdom that has joined us on the Weiss Advice podcast, but he is one of my favorite LinkedIn gurus, if you will, that I follow on LinkedIn, just giving tremendous amount of strategy, of advice, and how to use the platform and updates and things like that. So without further ado, John Espirian, how are you today?
Thank you very much, first of all, Yonah, for having me. I'm doing really, really well. Looking forward to our chat, and I love all things LinkedIn. So any chance to talk about the platform, I'm up for it. So let's do it.
Yeah, I mean, John is a self-proclaimed LinkedIn nerd. So, and if you don't know what that means, I mean, go to his website, go to his LinkedIn profile, espirian.co.uk. He's got tremendous amount of valuable information, he's a content writer by trade. So that's what his profession is. So he's really, really good at that. But he happens to take LinkedIn very, very seriously, more seriously than almost anyone I've ever seen, which is incredible. He's got a great book, as you can see in the background there, if you're watching the video over here, called Content DNA, in which, he just goes through and gives you everything you need to know about how to make the best content and how to use the best content, more importantly. Because it's not enough if you have good content, but you don't know how to use it properly, then you're kind of stuck with it. So that's a little bit of background. John, I'd love to just jump right in here. You are one of the people that I've seen come out with very insightful experiments using LinkedIn. I've followed that pattern a little bit, but how did you get started in just literally experimenting and showing the science of how using LinkedIn?
You know what? When I was at school, I was wanting to become a biochemist. I was wanting to be that guy in the lab, and I was told I would never be quite smart enough to do it. So here I am years later, and I've got that kind of scientific A/B testing. Does this really work? Should we believe the gurus? No. Let's test it for ourselves. I've got that mentality. So whenever someone tells me a fact, I want to go and press a button, click a menu. I want to go and test it for myself, get my own data. And that kind of thing is not the kind of thing that you can easily Google. So that makes it automatically a little bit more appealing than just spewing some normal kind of thought leadership stuff out there. I want hard data. I want my own experiments. So that's what I try to do every month. I try and pick some topic that I'm interested in and just go and check it and see what works. So that's what I'm doing. It's one of my brand values, is to be an eager experimenter, and I love sharing those results with my colleagues. So for example, one of my recent ones was, people were saying, hey, can you put links in LinkedIn posts? Is that going to kill your organic reach? And as a content creator, it's a really important question to be able to get that right. Because if I'm creating content for my clients, and then I tell them that, hey, if we include your links to your website in the post, actually that content's not going to go anywhere. That's kind of an important thing to know. But it seems that recently LinkedIn's algorithm has changed, so that for the longest time, for about 2 years, I've been telling people, do not put links direct in your LinkedIn posts. Well, guess what? LinkedIn's algorithm sometime around May 2020 seems to have changed, so that if you do include a link direct in your post, that does not affect your organic reach. Whether it'll stay like that, I don't know, but I did a month-long experiment where I tested lots of posts, and those posts were getting more than 10,000 views each, even though they contained external links. That would have been unheard of before, and therefore, allied with other data I've seen, I can be fairly confident in saying right now, LinkedIn posts are okay.
Yeah, and it's something that I've been interviewed several times on podcasts talking about LinkedIn, and it's something, I'm sure I got it from you and from others over the past few years. Just it didn't work. I used to call it like linked out, right? Don't put the link in there because they don't want you to leave the platform, right? LinkedIn gets paid by you spending more time on the platform. Now, if you have a link in there and all your post is, first of all, if all your post is just a link, that's a different subject, right? People just like take a link and post it, YouTube video or what have you, an article, and that's it. I feel like that has less potential engagement and than a post where you're filled with value, filled with content, and it just happens to contain a link in it.
Yeah. So the way that the LinkedIn algorithm has changed is that they're now prioritizing this idea of dwell time. In other words, when someone sees a post in their feed and they click the little see more link that lets them expand and see the rest of the content, if that content is engaging enough to capture the audience and keep them sitting there and reading for a few minutes, if that also includes a link, they're kind of saying, well, this is part of the overall experience, and that person has then maybe stayed on the platform and then gone on to read something else. That's okay. We can see that the end user has got some value from this, and therefore we're going to promote that content throughout the rest of the network. So it is a bit of a kind of paradigm shift, if you like, to the way that LinkedIn is thinking about these things. And it could be related to the fact that a new CEO is at the helm from the start of June 2020, and that guy used to work for the product team. So he's really interested in the technical bits about how the product works. So it could all be interrelated there.
That's an interesting theory. Yeah. Obviously, when things change internally at a company, obviously, especially like a social media company, there's going to be, repercussions, and it's going to kind of trickle down to the rest of the platform. So that's really interesting that it might have to do with the new CEO coming on. I think LinkedIn has gotten better over time. I've been on LinkedIn for 10 years or so, and obviously it was just like a place to put your resume until about 2-3 years ago. And now it's just, it's taken off, right? What would you say is like for someone who's starting out on LinkedIn and they're just trying to find their place? And I always say that it's the best place to kind of self-brand yourself. What would you say would be the number one, or, 2, 3, whatever, if you want to include a few in there, thing people need to know when they're starting out on LinkedIn to increase that brand awareness?
Okay, well, I think you need to start by focusing on the things that travel with you in every part of LinkedIn. And there are 3 things. So that's your name, which you can't change. That's your profile photo, and that's your headline. Those are the 3 bits of data that follow you everywhere on LinkedIn. So you need a compelling headline, you need a really good profile photo, and then you need to fill out the rest of your profile. So the headline is often what I work with on people's profiles first. That's the hook that gets people to look at your profile. And I always tell people that your content tells, but your profile sells. Okay, so your profile is where prospective buyers go from, who is this guy, to, okay, we need to connect and we need to speak with this guy now. And that starts with a really good headline. So I recommend, in my book, I talk about chunking your headline into 3 discrete sections. So the 3 I's, which are interesting, informative, and intriguing. Now, another recent change on LinkedIn is that the 120 character headline limit that you used to have has now been expanded to 220 characters. Oh. So you've got an extra 100 characters to play with. I still recommend this 3-part chunking thing, so that the interesting bit really gets across in an interesting way the core business that you're doing. So whether it's about tax segregation, or whether it's about logo design, or whether it's about building people a house, you need to get that across in the opening 40 characters or so. The reason that 40 characters is important is because even on LinkedIn mobile, you'll just see a snapshot, a little part of the headline, and it's always the first 40 characters that you'll see. So you need to hook that person with what your value is in the first 40. You use the main chunk of the headline to add things like SEO keywords, like the things that will expand on what that interesting thing is. So for me, I talk about my book and I talk about being a LinkedIn nerd. And then the final bit, the bit that almost everyone ignores, is the intriguing bit. That's the conversation starter, the thing that's a bit different, the thing that makes you go, what's that? Or, yes, I know what that is. I love that. So for me, I've taken a chapter of one of my in the book, which is about the person I don't want to serve, the person I want to avoid in my business. I call that person a salesy douche canoe. And I say in my intriguing part of my headline, not a douche canoe, right? So some people laugh at that. Other people go, what does that actually mean?
Right. What does that
it's a technique to start a conversation. And I think all good content on social media starts a conversation. That's all it's meant to do. And that's where the human networking thing comes in. You get your foot in the door, you start a conversation, and then you build a relationship. And somewhere down the line, that person either does business with you directly or they refer you to someone they know who needs exactly your service. So think in terms of, how am I going to start a conversation with someone new today? And in a compelling headline that's chunked in those 3 ways, that's the best route to get there.
That's awesome. And I think that's so important because, like you said, it goes with you everywhere. It travels together with you. When you're commenting on someone else's post, hey, when you're even liking someone else's post, and then someone looks and says, who else liked this? And they see your name and your headline and your picture. That's what they're going to see. So those 3 things are certainly the most integral part of your LinkedIn biology, if you will.
Yeah, and to follow up on your question, so you're saying what are the important things to do? Yeah. So obviously you get those things sorted, and then you'll fill out the rest of your profile. But then what you need to do, I think, is you need to move out of the consumer category, the bottom level where you're just looking and reading and observing, and that's all you do on LinkedIn, to the next category, which is contributing. So the best thing to do, if you're not confident enough to put your own content out, is go and find content that speaks to you at some level from your ideal clients or from people who think alike to you, and try and comment as authoritatively in depth as you can, especially on popular posts, because you've got a chance of leaving a comment that rises to the top of the list of comments, because these are sorted in terms of their popularity, that reveals to your second and third level networks something that shows your expertise in your field, and they go, who is that guy? I need to go and connect with him. That's what you need to do. So even if you don't create your own content, which a lot of people are nervous about doing in the first instance of getting involved on LinkedIn, you can take that intermediate step of going and contributing to other people's content. And that's a brilliant way of getting seen.
Right. Even if you can't make your own posts or have trouble creating your own content, very few people have trouble having conversations. Right? Very few people have trouble writing emails or, just engaging, writing text messages. And so that's how I kind of have to view writing comments, thoughtful comments on other people's posts, because again, like you said, you're going to get noticed even more so than writing your own original content. Because if you're writing a popular comment on someone else's post, who they're getting, 10,000, 20,000 views, and everyone who sees that, especially if you're one of the first people to comment on the post as well, you're going to get a lot more exposure. Now, in doing so, I'm just curious your opinion on this, because you mentioned obviously use your your technical knowledge of the subject that you're good in, and show people how this guy really knows what he's talking about. There's a fine line between like self promotion or like spammy comments where people are just like, I'm the best copywriter in the like whatever it is, and truly adding value. How do you deal with people who are just come off as like spammy or not even spammy, but just like kind of self-promoting themselves in your own comments?
I think that the important thing for you to note, for anyone to note when they're commenting, is that you are contributing to someone else's conversation. Okay, you're not there to take over. You're not being invited to their party to become the maitre d'. You're there to be a good guest. Okay, so you acknowledge the host, the person who started the conversation. You acknowledge the points they've made. If there's anything that's been left incomplete, or that you have some kind of experience in that would maybe challenge the original poster's point, do so in a respectful manner. You have to remember that this is a professional platform and anyone could be looking at that content. So this is a way to get across your personality, but also your personal values. So if you're the kind of guy who comes in and saying, no, you're all wrong, and here's why, and shouty, and here's my blog post that, disproves all of this and tries to take people away, that says something about you, that you feel entitled enough that you can go and stamp on someone else. Who's going to want to work with someone like that? That's not cool. Similarly, if all you do is just praise with no substance, well, what does that say? You're just a cheerleader. You're just part of noise. There's no value in that either. And if you're someone who contributes with no other substance, so just great post, I agree. Who cares? Who cares that you agree?
Well, I've seen
right?
I've seen a lot of, like, believe it or not, like a lot of bots and things like that recently, where they're coming in, or these pods or whatever you want to call them, that people are just going in and writing these 1-word, 2-word comments like, great, you're great, love you, whatever. Like,
Yeah. You need to think about what the original poster is trying to say. You need to think of a way of developing the discussion, bringing your expertise to bear, and doing it in a respectful way that honors the original post. If you can do that on a consistent basis, people will see that you're probably their kind of person. They can see your values. They can see your personality. You can put some humor in there if that's your style, and that's cool. And often, it feels a bit more relaxed to do that in comments rather than actually committing to do that in one of your own posts. But it's just a case of just using your brain a little bit and being respectful and showing the knowledge you've got without being salesy or without being just that bit too arrogant.
yeah, and that's tremendous. And I always liken LinkedIn to like a networking event, right? And and the difference, in an analogy that I've made in the past, which I think holds very true to what you're saying here, is that Facebook or Instagram, these kind of things are like, or Facebook, for example, is like going to a bar with your friends, or a pub, perhaps, with your friends. And LinkedIn is like going to a business networking event. And so the demeanor in which you conduct yourself is clearly must be different.
Yeah, absolutely. And it's also, like all social media, it's a worldwide thing, okay? So you're interacting not only with people in your own city, in your own country, you're interacting with people in different parts of the world with different cultural norms. You have to be sensitive to all of those things and show yourself to be whatever your brand values are. This comes back to what I wrote in my book. Whatever your brand values you've identified as, they need to come out in everything that you do. So that applies to comments, it applies to posts, it applies to direct messages. Everything should represent the shape that you have decided that you're going to put into the world. And that really ought to start with respect of the other person that you're commenting on. And 100%. If you do that, that's what I've been doing for 3 years hard on LinkedIn now, is putting my name out there by commenting thoughtfully and putting my own posts out. And that has attracted more like-minded people into my network, and correspondingly my content now gets great engagement, because all of those people who are on my side want to support me when my content comes out. They didn't exist 3 years ago. They weren't around. They didn't know who I was. It takes time to build up to that point where your comments really and posts really do get noticed. Once they do, you've got an army of people who are willing to engage on your stuff, and that's brilliant because it exposes you to your ideal clients.
Yeah, that's tremendous. I couldn't agree with more of that. That's so valuable. And like you said, it takes a long time to build these things up. And it's a community, and it's a real thing. So like trying to cheat yourself, and this goes back to what I said a minute ago about these pods and these kind of bots, and you're just cheating the system. You're not really gaining, much out of that. At least that's what I think.
Yeah, that's right. And also, I mean, a couple of the big issues with things like engagement pods are, firstly, you often get into those with people who are in different lines of business, which means that you're going to end up referring content that isn't relevant to the ideal person who's following you into their feed. And they're going to think, well, hey, I'm following a copywriter here, but suddenly he's talking about, some kind of water treatment thing. I'm not following him for that. Right. I'm going to unfollow. And secondly, if you do get into pods, it often means that you get very, very quick early engagement from the same small group of people. Well, guess what? LinkedIn isn't stupid. They're going to start seeing those patterns and going, hey, that guy posts something, and then the same seven people always go and like and comment straight away. That's a bit fishy. So I'd advise anyone listening to this, do it the honest way. Do it the organic way. Accept that it takes time to build your authority, and in the end, you'll have a more fulfilling experience on LinkedIn because people will naturally want to comment. Yeah, you won't get engagement from day one. I didn't get any engagement of any significant note for the first 9 months that I was on LinkedIn. That's a long time to wait. But now it's been 3 years and I get loads and loads of engagement. And if your business is going to be around for 5 years, 10 years, 20 years, does it matter that it might take you maybe 3 years to really build up a significant social media presence? I think in the big picture, it's worth doing, and it's the honest way of doing it as well.
100%. Do you see anything going forward, any changes or any certain strategies that are working better than others going forward on LinkedIn?
Well, I think for the longest time now, LinkedIn has been doing a lot to promote document posts in the short form feed. So document posts are where you can embed a Word document, a PowerPoint document, a PDF. And now that there have been these changes to the dwell time ranking factor, something that is longer form, like a document that has multiple pages, is more likely to keep people engaged. And I always find that my document posts always will get 5 figures of views every time. And so if you can invest some time in maybe setting up a template, something that looks nice on the first page, something that looks nice on the last page, and that is really easy to fill for the meat of the content, that can help you produce something that looks good, it's branded, and it's likely to get a lot of engagement and a lot of visibility. So I think document posts are great. I also think that video content is a real winner for LinkedIn. It has been for some time, but even more so now, again, because of that change. So despite the fact that I'm a writer, I rely on video to help me get some personality across and to represent my visual brand as much as possible. And I think even if you can get on screen only for 30 seconds, that's such a difference. You just get to see someone's body language, how passionate they are about the topic. And that can be the difference between, I can't remember what this guy does, to, yeah, that's the copywriter we want to work with, or whatever it is. So try 30 seconds on camera and pin it to your profile and just give people a quick introduction. Hi, this is my name. This is what I do. This is who I serve. If you're interested, let's have a chat. Done. It can really make the difference between people connecting with you and contacting you and not.
Excellent advice. That's awesome. So without further ado, I'd love to just jump right into the final 4 over here, because we could go on for ages on this stuff. It's some of my favorite topics, and I love to pick the brain of someone like yourself who just has so much knowledge and experience because again, it's the nerd in you, right? The testing, the scientific aspect of it that you're really digging down in. So I trust that, when I see like an experiment, or I see like somebody say, do this or try this, and you've given the data to back that up, that speaks volumes.
Cool. Thank you.
Yeah. But again, we do have a time limit. So anyways, first question I ask every single guest for this final 4 segment is, what is the worst job that you ever had?
Well, you know what? I'm really happy wearing this headset and talking to you now. But the worst was being a frontline call center support agent where I'd have to wear a headset like this and sit in front of a phone and not know what was going to happen next. Is it going to be a nice customer? Is it going to be an angry customer? Is it going to be someone asking me a really difficult thing that I just have no idea how to fix? There's kind of stress involved in doing that. So I don't like not being in control of my calls. So being a frontline call center operative, that ain't for me.
Makes sense. Second question, what is a book you've read that's given you a paradigm shift?
I think, well, I've got a name too here. One of them was Deep Work by Cal Newport. I think just the idea, looking back at the philosophers and understanding how you need to kind of isolate yourself and focus on the projects that will really make a difference. That made a difference to me, and I read that at the start of 2017. And also Known by Mark Schaefer, which went into 70 different case studies of people who have taken time from going from zero to becoming known in their industry. And for all of them, the average time it took was 2.5 years.
Interesting.
2.5 years to become known. So there's a kind of step-by-step framework there. And Mark very kindly wrote the foreword for my book, Content DNA, and he said that my book was an excellent companion for his. That's one of the highest bits of praise I've ever had. So Deep Work by Cal Newport, Known by Mark Schaefer.
Beautiful. I'll have to check those out. Known, I have not. This is the first time I'm knowing of Known, but Deep Work is definitely, it's already on my list from one of my previous guests, actually. Mark Jensen mentioned that book about a month ago. So thank you for that. Let's get on to the third question, which is always a fun one. What's a skill or talent that you would like to learn?
I tell you what, I've recently I've discovered a guitar teacher who does these reaction videos to really complex guitar riffs and band performances. Now, I'm not musical at all, but seeing the passion that someone has and listening to them talk in technical language about beautiful harmonies, that makes me want to try and learn an instrument. So my mum always wanted me to learn the piano. I think I'd be more of a guitar or a drummer maybe. So something like that, something musical would be wonderful.
That's awesome. Yeah, music is incredible language. It really adds to so many aspects of life because it brings out something in the person who's playing that instrument. Kind of
really
hidden recesses of emotion and experience that are just incredible once you get good at it. But again, it takes a long time. It's another thing that you're not going to pick up in a short amount of time. It's that kind of tedious practice over and over and over and over again until you get things. Fourth and final question: what does success mean to you?
Well, you know what I found during life, that the worst thing for me is stress. Right. So success for me is the systematic removal of stress from my day. So it means being around the people I want, doing the work that I want to do, and not having to have worries about money. All of that I tie to a reduction in stress. So that is my success, is when I don't have stress in my day.
That's a very profound answer. And I think that's, I think everyone would agree with that. No one likes stress. And if we can systematically reduce it, or eliminate it to the best of our ability, I think that is successful.
When we're winning.
Exactly. Where can our listeners find you or find out more about you? Which may seem
thanks,
obvious.
Fiona. It does seem obvious. I'm blessed to have a very unusual surname. So if you search for Espirian on Google, you'll find my website and my LinkedIn profile. But LinkedIn is the social media platform that I spend most of my time on. It's where I get most of my business now as well. So if you find me on LinkedIn, please send me a personalized invitation to connect and say that you've heard me on Weiss Advice. That would be really appreciated. And also, I have another conversation starter. I have a secret word on my LinkedIn profile. So if you read my about statement, I expect you to find my secret word and use it in your invitation, and then we'll chat.
That's awesome. I love it because it really encourages people to use the platform in the best way possible. So that's awesome. And do you change that from time to time? I'm just curious.
I don't. No, I've picked a word and I'm sticking with it. It's a nice neutral word, but it's not the kind of thing you'd put in a normal invitation message. So I know that if I see it, it's because you've read it in my about statement, and that tells me that you're interested in me. So that's what I like to see.
That's very brilliant, and I would expect none less from you. But incredible, John. It's been so much fun. I love the fact that you've just constantly providing so much value. I've gained so much from just this short conversation, and I hope our audience has as well. So thank you so much for taking the time and joining us today.
Awesome. Thanks for having me, Yona. Cheers.
Yeah, my pleasure. And to all our listeners, thank you again for joining us. And remember, the best advice comes only when you ask. Real quick, I have one question for you. Did you like this episode? If you did, I want to ask you a huge favor. See, the biggest thing that helps this podcast grow and that will spread this message to the whole world is that if you leave a review, a rating, and subscribe to the podcast. What that does is it basically tells the platforms that this podcast is out on is that you like my stuff and I'm doing something right. So take a few seconds out of your day, hit that subscribe button, leave a rating or review. I would be extremely grateful. Also, I want to hear from you guys. So I want to hear some feedback. If you have any questions for future episodes, please find me on LinkedIn. Send me a DM, a connection request, Yona Weiss, and I'd love to hear from you.